Good evening. If any of you are interested in getting seconds, now is the time before the dance team comes on. Feel free, we have lots of food.
Hi, my name is Audrey Williams, and I've been a member of Iowa Ondi, the state of Iowa's and University of Iowa's first Bollywood fusion dance team for 2 years now. And we're going to give you guys a performance today, so I hope you guys enjoy it. It's just kind of a short performance. Our longest performance, the full performance, is about 8 minutes long, but we just kind of want to give you guys a sneak preview. And if you want to see some of our other performances, we're going to be performing at Relay for Life, if any of you guys are involved in that. We'll also be performing at Cultural Diversity Festival, and both of those, Relay for Life is, I think, March 30th, and Cultural Diversity Festival is March 31st. And hopefully we'll have a few other performances, so just keep your eyes open. We also have a Facebook page, so if you want to find us there. And we hope you guys enjoy the show.
Another hand for our performers tonight, Iowa Ondi and Bari Karachai and John Bayless. Again, my name is Yashar Vasef. I'm the director of the Iowa United Nations Association. I want to thank everyone once more for coming out tonight. We have an amazing crowd tonight. And before we introduce our speaker tonight, I just want to briefly touch on the work of the Iowa United Nations Association. We are a nonprofit organization. Our roots trace back to the 1950s here in Iowa, when Eleanor Roosevelt visited our great state and spoke about the UN and their global mission. And out of that, a UN club was born, which eventually became the United Nations Association Iowa Division. And what we do in a nutshell is we promote the values and the global mission of the United Nations. Anything from promoting the work of UNICEF through Trick or Treat for UNICEF here in Iowa across the state, to celebrating UN Day by bringing national speakers from Washington and New York, to promoting the Model UN program here in Iowa as well. The United Nations Association is membership-based. We rely on you, our members, to keep our mission alive. So I'm just going to make one final pitch for membership tonight. We'd love to get as many new faces in the UNA Club as we can, and we do have brochures out in the back, and we do have membership gift bags as well. At this time, I just want to thank everyone for choosing OBRIC to celebrate International Women's Day. We're here in support of the UN Trust Fund to End Violence Against Women and Girls. This is something near and dear to myself as a native of Iran, where we just saw elections there where women came out to vote, but in Iran still, there are shortcomings. Even though there are shortcomings, women are empowered, and it's because of entities like the UN Trust Fund where they work with local groups that empower women to get involved in various capacities in various venues in societies where gender equality is still a shortcoming. The UN Trust Fund empowers women to receive an education, to vote, but much more than that. They provide counseling. They link up with local entities that educate men on the issue of domestic violence. And everything we do tonight, from the ticket sales to the silent auction, is going to benefit the UN Trust Fund. So I just want to thank you once again for coming and choosing to help us benefit this great cause tonight. On that note, our featured speaker tonight is Elizabeth Heinemann. She's an associate professor in the Department of History and the Department of Gender, Women's, and Sexuality Studies at the University of Iowa, where she also serves as the associate director of the Center for Human Rights. She teaches courses in European history and the history of gender, sexuality, and human rights. She's the editor of the Sexual Violence in Conflict Zones, From the Ancient World to the Era of Human Rights, and author, most recently, of Before Porn Was Legal, The Erotica Empire of Beate Uhse. Please join me in welcoming Elizabeth Heinemann.
Hi there. I hope you can all hear me. No? Like that? Up? Right into, oh, now I'm getting it. Okay, good. Thanks for the coaching. I want to thank the Iowa UN Association for the invitation to speak tonight. It's a real honor to be part of this event, which of course is not just an Iowa event, but the Night of a Thousand Dinners, to be part of such a broad effort to combat violence against women. When Mr. Vassef asked me to speak tonight on the subject of violence against women, I was very, very happy for the opportunity. My career, such as it is, in thinking about violence against women stretches back to my college internship with a domestic violence shelter, and it extends to my more recent work on sexual violence in conflict zones. In a way, those two experiences represent the poles of how we often think about violence against women. Domestic violence poses the problem of how we think about the so-called private sphere. Not only does domestic violence occur behind closed doors, following the sort of colloquial definition of the private, but the violence is being perpetrated by a private actor that is not someone acting on behalf of a state. In the case of sexual violence in conflict zones, we see something quite different in a way. Few activities are so public as war, which is not only public in the sense that it's highly visible. Thank you. I feel much better now. That was a strain. War is not only public in the sense that it's highly visible, but also in the more technical sense that it is an act of state, or at least the state is usually at least one of the principal actors. The state might actually orchestrate sexual violence as a tool of war, or it might tacitly permit military men, agents of the state, to perpetrate sexual violence. My plan was to speak about the range of types of violence against women, and especially about the power of naming such violence. One of the most remarkable developments in the global human rights movement of the last couple of decades has been the realization that human rights apply to the private as well as the public sphere. Once upon a time, not so very long ago, organizations like Amnesty International turned down petitions to address domestic violence on the grounds that to do so would dilute their core mission to address human rights, which they understood to mean repression of liberties by the state. Thus, Amnesty's campaign to draw attention to prisoners of conscience, people who had been imprisoned, perhaps tortured, for their political dissent. Only after decades of prodding did AI and similar organizations fully accept the implications of Article 5 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which says that no one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment, period. It doesn't say that no one shall be subjected to such treatment by the state. It just says that no one should be subjected to such treatment. Suffering torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment by your domestic partner is just as an egregious a violation of human rights as is being subjected to such treatment by the police. This revolution in recognizing violence against women as a human rights violation did not just drop out of thin air. It was the result of decades of feminist organizing. If we think of the slogan, "The personal is political," which was popularized by New York radical feminist Carol Hanesh in 1969, we can see one of the American strands in this story. But of course, this was an international story. Women in other parts of the world didn't need Americans to inform them that the personal was political. They knew it too. Inspired by their common realization of problems affecting women worldwide, a global feminist movement emerged, inspiring, for example, the UN Decade on Women from 1976 to 85, a series of remarkable conferences on women, and eventually the revision of programs ranging from economic development to international law to reflect feminist insights. Conference development guidelines and laws do not guarantee that women will not be subject to violence, but they are an important step along the way. So, I was thinking about how to present this material, and particularly about how to tie this big picture, new theoretical insights about the public and the private, conferences attracting tens of thousands of people, that sort of thing, how to tie this big picture to events on the ground, to women's real lives today. Anyone who reads the newspapers can see that violence against women is still a big issue. Whether we think of widespread rape in the war in the Democratic Republic of Congo, or women's vulnerability to assault on American university campuses. But what examples, I wondered, should I draw on for today's talk? There is, sadly, a great deal to talk about. To prompt my thinking, I decided to take a quick look at the UN's webpage. Perhaps they'd have a discussion of a current crisis or one of their programs that would provide me with a useful prompt. And sure enough, the UN webpage has a feature page on International Women's Day. How very handy, I thought. So I clicked the link, which brought me to a page announcing in big orange letters the theme of International Women's Day 2012. Empower rural women, end hunger and poverty. Well, I thought this did not seem to be about women and violence. The first thought that crossed my mind was that the UN is not a strictly hierarchical, top-down organization ordering all its affiliate organizations to promulgate a single uniform message. Because here we are, raising campaigns for the UN's very important campaign to end violence against women, while the UN has declared its theme for International Women's Day to be the empowerment of rural women to end hunger and poverty. Not to put too fine a point on it, But having spent a great deal of time studying communist Eastern Europe, and we should keep in mind that International Women's Day was a national holiday in communist states, I can assure you that there are environments in which, if the central organization had chosen a specific theme for International Women's Day, then each town's commemoration of International Women's Day would feature speakers droning on unimaginatively about the prescribed theme. The second thought that crossed my mind was that I should try to bring these two themes together. But this seemed like a challenge. This seemed like maybe kind of a stretch. And then the third thought that crossed my mind was that this was not a stretch at all, because poverty is violence. When an IED explodes near a soldier's head, he develops traumatic brain injury and becomes incapable of holding down decent work. When a baby doesn't get proper nutrition, her brain doesn't develop as it should, and she grows up incapable of holding down decent work. When a teenager is shot in gang violence, he loses a leg. When a teenager's parents can't afford a doctor to look after an infection that has developed into gangrene, she loses a leg. When sex traffickers drug and kidnap a woman and sell her into sexual slavery, she stands a good chance of dying young of HIV or AIDS. When a girl discovers that the only way to pay her school fees is to make herself sexually available to an older man who will pay her way, she stands a good chance of dying young of HIV/AIDS. When countries go to war, people die. When famine hits a population already barely eking out their subsistence, people die. Poverty kills. And poverty is a women's issue. Around half of all pregnant women in developing countries are anemic. Iron deficiency causes around 110,000 deaths during childbirths each year. Are these women any less dead than soldiers who die on the battlefield or women civilians who die in war? Malnourished mothers often give birth to underweight babies who are 20% more likely to die before the age of 5. Up to 17 million children are born underweight every year. For the survivors, the remaining 80%, are the developmental disabilities caused by fetal malnutrition any less serious than the disabilities caused by torture in the prison cells of repressive governments? Thank you. Worldwide, for every 100 school-age boys who are not in school, there are 122 girls who are not in school. In some countries, this gender gap is much wider, 270 to 100 in Yemen, 426 to 100 in India. As those girls grow up unable to support themselves, is the sexual abuse they routinely suffer in the premature marriages they enter in order to spare their families the burden of continued support any less injurious than the sexual abuse that many men routinely suffer in the American prison system? We speak of the violence of the gun, of the fist, of the sexual act, but we must also speak of the violence of poverty. And we must remember the ways that one kind of violence facilitates the other. Domestic violence increases when couples face financial strains. Street violence increases when high unemployment forces young people into illicit economies, such as the drug economy. Trafficking increases when people place themselves in the hands of strangers who promise to transport them to a land that has better work than what's available at home. And in the not-so-distant future, states may go to war over water. You may be sure that in those water wars, civilians, women, children, and the elderly will be hit the hardest, because that's how war works. And so, we need to support the work of the UN Trust Fund to end violence against women. And we need to support the anti-poverty programs that address the context in which so much violence occurs. The International Day of Rural Women will be celebrated on October 15th. On October 16th is World Food Day. October 17th brings the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty. All of these events, like the event we're participating in tonight, are part of a larger whole. There are millions of people working worldwide on such efforts. Remember that global feminist movement from the 1970s? It's much bigger now. It's grown. And it's had an incredible impact on the UN as well as other organizations. The UN now not only recognizes that domestic violence is torture, but also that programs of economic development must take into account the ways that labor is divided and resources allocated within the household. It's been an enormously powerful movement, right? The power of language, the power of naming. This is important work, and there are talented people out there on the ground making sure that it gets done. And we're in a position tonight to help out. Thanks for listening, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Professor Heinemann. Very quickly, we'd just like to honor you as an honorary member of UNA with your very own UNA gift bag with all sorts of UN goodies. Thank you. Thank you again for coming out on International Women's Day tonight. And I just want to briefly mention the silent auction does close at 7:45 promptly. If you end up winning and you have to leave before then, we will contact you. Thanks again, and enjoy yourself, and we have plenty of seconds and thirds to go around, so help yourself. Thank you.